Order. Special meeting of the Hudson Board of Education, Tuesday, October 30th at 6:30 p.m. And we'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you each have a copy of the revised agenda in front of you. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion. by Cindy, second by Brian. Any discussion? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. We'll move on to item number 4, the report. We'll get an update on the EP Rock Fire and the restoration update. Mary?
Well, it's hard to imagine what a small fire can actually do, a one-room fire can do to a school. We've actually had that happen twice, and certainly our experience at the middle school has helped us plan and prepare and respond to the current fire that we've had at EP Rock. The fire, as you know, was in the boiler room. It went out on its own. It started sometime between Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning, discovered by a custodian. It affected significantly, smoke damage affected the east wing of the building, gym, cafeteria, media center, and the adjacent classrooms. But the west wing is mostly untouched. It has a different boiler system, so that was helpful to us. We're thankful, certainly, for the quick response of the Hudson Fire Department helping us out. The quick response of restoration professionals, and that is the group that's coordinated the cleanup for us. same company that did the middle school cleanup as well. And they were there within a few hours of the discovery of the fire, and were starting to air out the building, and that was very, very helpful. They've been working around the clock ever since they came. They started with about 12 individuals that evening. The next day it was up to 30. That night it was 12, and today we have had 70 workers in there today. So they are, it's a very significant cleanup. Takes a lot of time, and Tim's going to talk about some of those things after I recognize some of the things that have to be done to actually respond to this fire. The response in the district certainly involves a number of our employees and employee groups, and it's really hard to imagine when it's a one-room fire and how much it takes to actually respond and manage the cleanup effort. So Jim Stayskoll and the Facilities and Grounds custodian crews had assisted with the cleanup around the clock and really managed, worked with the restoration professionals and done a fantastic job. Amy Hamburg, principal of EP Rock, and the office staff and teachers staffed the phones on Sunday afternoon and evening and called all the parents of the 635 students at EP Rock to let them know that there wouldn't be school the next day. And we prepared Monica Beulah and Tom Stiles from our bus company, worked on running all the EP bus routes on Monday, just in case any students were there and they were ready to pick them up. And Pat Hodges at Willow River had her staff ready to greet those buses and take those students to school-age care so that we could manage them as well, so that we didn't have students, you know, who were unaware and unaccounted for. So everyone pitched in at that time, and actually only 2 students actually came to school. There were no students picked up by buses, but 2 students came to school. I think that's a real credit to that staff and the efforts that they took. Let's see. To support our working parents, Michelle Hagan and our school-age care workers have made adjustments and opened up for Rock families at Willow River. Now that's taking almost all the areas at Willow River that don't have students in classrooms to manage those students in school-age care. So they've really stepped up to help with that. And then the YMCA Camp St. Croix has offered their full-day program to Rock students as well for at least through Thursday. I don't know if that's also going to happen on Friday, but certainly a place for our working parents to know that their children are safe, secure, and have a good program. The Learning Services and School-Age Care staff called all the school-age parents to let them know of these opportunities and that services were available. Peggy Eller and Rock's cook have helped assess the kitchen equipment and the food at Rock and making decisions about that. They've also provided additional lunches at Willow River for the school-age care children and accommodated that those additional students. Peggy and her staff are planning to provide lunch at Rock when we reopen without the cafeteria. So they are changing the menus to be able to provide food that will accommodate not having a kitchen to use so that they can still offer hot lunch to our students. Very committed to that. Nancy Toll and the IT staff were there Monday morning going through inventorying all of our technology equipment in the East Wing. And if you start thinking of each classroom, the music room and so forth, there is a significant amount of technology equipment when you think of phones, computers, TVs, VCRs, so much more that stereo equipment that all had to be inventoried, and it had to be packed and moved out, and that will be cleaned and returned, and they will help with the installation of that. Our nurses have identified students with asthma and other respiratory illnesses and are contacting both staff and students to give them some additional health care information. Tracy Havishaline has been sending out updates to you and to our staff, updating the website with information at the EP Rocks website and also the district website. And she was the one that made arrangements with Camp St. Croix as well for for care there. Tim, Sandy, and Nancy have been involved in planning, decision-making, and support in the cleanup effort. We've been having meetings every day with a kind of a leadership team, moving forward, what do we need to do next, what's new, what do we need to plan for. All of these people and others I haven't mentioned have really put aside their daily work to work the longer hours that are needed, whatever it takes to get the word out, to make accommodations, to manage this enormous challenge for the district. We've supported the families of EP Rock and our students, and we'll continue to do that until the school reopens. I think EP Rock's parents have also been very good about accepting the challenge of the situation and understanding the challenges that we face and making accommodations for their children during this time period. Teachers will be returning tomorrow. They will be working in the west wing of the building, and the restoration professionals and crews will still be working in the east wing of the building. We had hoped that students would come back on Friday. The scope of the work expanded somewhat today, and so we just made a decision just now that we will not be open on Friday, and we hope to open on Monday. Certainly contingent on a number of things like certainly the cleanup needs to be completed in the rooms that are going to be used. The fire alarm system has to be up and running. We have to have certain permits issued, and air quality testing has to be satisfactory for us to be able to reopen. So we're making plans for all of those things, continuing to work up on the cleanup, and Tim's going to give some more specifics about those efforts.
Sure. I'll just say I was pretty impressed. As Mary said, when you have a school of over 600 kids and you have kind of a short notice to get the word out. When I was there on Monday morning, I said, geez, you need me to stand by a door and help with the kids that are going to be coming that didn't know. And there really was just a very small handful of kids, so it really went well. The biggest thing with this fire is there was very little fire damage. It all took place in the boiler room, and but you know, the amount of smoke damage and soot, that's the major part of the cleanup where the effort is, and that's where all the time is going to be spent. There's just cleaning, doing a lot of cleaning, taking each piece of furniture and cleaning that, cleaning carpets, replacing, there's some carpet replacement that will happen. We've got a lot of the ceiling grids have been taken out and tiles taken out, and they will all be replaced with new ceiling grid and tiles. And on the one end of the building, the front end of the building on the west side is in good condition, but it's mainly the critical area is on the east side, gymnasium, cafeteria, and those classrooms that have been really affected. One of the things that delayed us a little bit in not being open on Friday is that today we had the electrical inspector out, and they were looking at our service. Our main service comes in where that boiler room is. And so because of all of the soot in that room, there's been some damage to the electrical service panels and what they call switch gears. And those are things that you can't just order immediately and go pick up. There's some lead time on ordering and getting those pieces in. So the inspector felt that there were certain pieces that needed to be, major electrical components that needed to be replaced. And so that's kind of where we are right now, is getting those pieces ordered and getting them delivered in a fashion so that they can be installed, and then we can be up and running. But they actually will be shutting power down to the building probably on, I think it's on Thursday. So they will actually, and they'll also actually, our restoration professionals company will have temporary power so that they can continue to work and clean. But we won't, but the actual main power of the building will be shut down while these major pieces of electrical equipment are replaced and cleaned, or cleaned. The good news is we didn't, our boilers were inspected, and there was no damage to the boilers, but again, they'll have to be thoroughly cleaned and adjusted so that they're operating properly. But they were fired up on Monday, and they did operate. So that's a major piece a major piece of damage that was avoided. Like Mary said, shooting for a Monday opening. They will still be working in the gymnasium and the cafeteria cleaning, and then the media center also is going to have a little more extensive work done to it. They were unable to get above the ceiling and get into the ductwork there to clean that, and all the ductwork is being cleaned. And so what's going to happen there is there's going to be some new ductwork installed, and so that's going to take a little bit more time. So we're thinking maybe up to an additional week for the media center to be up and running. But the rest of the classrooms will be opened. We're shooting for Monday, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Right?
The extent of this cleanup and the detail work that it takes is just enormous. Thinking about the rock gym and the ceiling itself reminds me of corrugated cardboard. It kind of goes like this. Very small strips all the way across the gym. That has to be HEPA-backed first with a vacuum, and then it has to be have a chemical wipe down. So they actually have to go through and do two process on every surface, and that's starting with the ceiling and moving down the walls and the floor and so forth. And in addition to that, they have air scrubbers all over the building that are really pulling the air in and taking any particles out of that air. Those have been going full steam since just a few hours after the fire itself was found, and that's really helped with the smell in the building and so forth.
Okay.
If you have any questions,
Yeah.
we'd be happy to
Any questions
try to
for
answer
Mary?
those.
Insurance is covering everything?
At this point, yes. We've talked to both our insurance companies. We've got the local government property insurance fund, which covers our buildings and content, and we're all set to go with them. And then we also had, since boilers were involved somewhat and not really knowing the extent of the damage at the time, we also did establish a claim file with our boiler or machinery breakdown insurance. So they've been put on notice too. But at this point, most of it almost all of the claim probably will fall under local government insurance property.
So what's our deductible? Do we have a financial liability for this thing?
Yeah, we've got a deductible, which is at least $5,000.
So that's right now, that's our only foreseen liability?
Right, yeah. And this one is a little different than the middle school fire in that, in the middle school, they had to replace a lot of desks and furniture, classroom furniture that was damaged. This one's a little bit different. They're able to clean it, so we won't have as much equipment replacement. But where the real cost is going to come in is all of the cleaning. As Mary mentioned, there are a tremendous number of people that are working, sometimes up to 70 people.
But you foresee that will be covered by insurance?
Right, yeah, I do. I mean, I certainly can't guarantee 100% coverage, but I do feel, and I did check during the last fire, local government property insurance fund did cover everything. They were very good to work with, is my understanding. So we do expect.
Tim is the insurance adjuster. Been out? The insurance adjuster?
Actually, no,
No,
I haven't.
okay.
And I did call and talk to them about that, and I said, they felt, since it was kind of contained to one room, they were under the understanding it was contained to one room. I said, no, we've got a major cleanup that's going on here. We'll run into the six figures, well into the six figures, I'm sure. And they said, well, you have our blessing to go ahead. We don't want we don't want to get in the way of a delaying opening of the school. So from everything we've told them, he said, you're doing everything right. You're getting it cleaned up. And that's what our main concern is for you right now, is that you're able to get everything cleaned up and you're able to open school. So they said, we'll probably send an adjuster out at some point in time, but as long as you're documenting and taking pictures, we're okay. So,
Can they send us that message?
Can
Just
we
to
get
get
that
the
right?
assurances.
yeah, I think
okay.
that we could probably get that right.
Want that
Okay,
blessing
good.
via first-class mail.
That probably wouldn't
Would
hurt,
be nice.
so,
Yeah.
okay, great, thank you. Any other questions
How
for
about
either?
just calendar makeup days in
That's a
terms
good
of
question.
academic?
We're looking into that. Certainly, the teachers have not been working for 2 days, and that will be something that will need to be made up at some point in the future. It's really going to be dependent on the Department of Public Instruction. We have to meet a certain number of days and a certain number of instructional hours. And so there's time that we have to check, and then we'll have to ask for a waiver from the state. But snow days would probably be part of that as well, so we're really not sure what we're asking for yet.
How much time was taken off the middle school? How many days were?
We were down for 5 days, but there were
Okay.
2 weekend days in
Okay.
that time period.
Okay.
So it was really 3 days,
Okay,
Thursday, Friday, and Monday. at the
We were
middle
able to
school.
absorb that just then,
No, we had to ask for a waiver for that one.
Right, okay.
I'm assuming we will be asking for a waiver, and the minutes of instruction are, at least the DPI has told me in the past, are the most significant.
Sure.
We have to have the required number of minutes,
Yeah.
and that'll
Yeah.
still be determined by the rest of the school calendar, and
so even though the students aren't back, the staff, teachers are?
Come back
are-
tomorrow.
they'll come
They're
tomorrow.
coming back tomorrow?
Mhm.
Okay.
And I think, I want to say my third grader was going to be doing testing this week too,
Mhm.
so how does that all fit in?
They're readjusting that schedule. That will be something the teachers are working on tomorrow. We still have a couple weeks. The time frame really goes up to Thanksgiving. So we have more time. If we were at the end of that testing time period, that would be very significant. But we do have additional time to complete those tests. That was one thing we had to rescue from the rooms that were affected, to make sure we got those boxes back and they
Mhm.
didn't get packed up and put away someplace.
Okay. Well,
Well,
oh, I'm sorry.
Just one more comment, probably, I'm sure you'll tag on, Dan, but just, again, you guys, great leadership, I think, too, adverse situation, I know you got recalled from vacation again, but, but just, kind of chips were down, but looks like you guys did an awesome job, so.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that review of all the different things, all the way from how lunches are being served, to the air quality, I mean, that's pretty well thought out, so nice job to
Yeah.
you guys for handling
Yeah,
not a great situation, so.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everybody, Jim Staskoff and his team, the EP Rock teachers, staff, Amy Hamburg, was, I'm sure, instrumental, and just, the understanding of the parents of EP Rock, I think, says a lot as well. So we'll get through it like we get through a lot of these issues in the past.
Possible to ask a question? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Do you want to fill out the form and?
It's pertaining to this, and I just didn't know.
Okay.
Thank you for-
Or we'll be happy to answer anything afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to the committee report. The Finance Committee, Tom Holland isn't here today. He has another commitment, work commitment. Tim, are you going to lead us on that one? From the,
I'm not very prepared here for that.
I think with the Finance Committee, I think the primary thing on that agenda, I was there, was the next agenda item having to do with the approval of the 07-08 budget and certification of the levy.
That has been part of our work, and also developing a guiding philosophy for rental of the facilities.
Okay.
And I believe, I don't know if make sure it's not in the packet here.
Well,
Or did-
Tim's
I'm
getting
fumbling-
ready
I'm
there.
fumbling
While
around
you're
here.
doing that, since Tom is the chair of the Finance Committee, he did write a letter to the board that I'll go ahead and read in relationship to the Finance Committee. I'm sorry that my work obligations are keeping me away from tonight's special board meeting. As chair of the Finance Committee, I'm particularly interested in this meeting as you are voting on the 2007-2008 operating budget for the district. As you are aware, the Finance Committee and staff have worked hard on this year's budget. With that, I am sending my support of the Finance Committee's recommendation for the 2007-2008 operating budget. Have a great meeting. Tom Howell.
Okay, I've got my agenda here.
Okay. Are you ready, Tim?
Yes. We did work on a draft of a facility use policy, and that's regarding rental and how we make determination on rental rates, whether it's a profit, a for-profit, a non-profit, school-based activities, and then priorities of those types of groups. And so that was one of the things that we were working on. Then, of course, we spent a fair amount of time on the 07-08 budget levy and updating that based on the most current legislation. And of course, we'll talk about that here too tonight. Talk a little bit about the direction for fiscal information on proposals. Was what we were doing satisfactory to the Finance Committee, to the board, as far as we tried to attach dollar amounts to any of the changes that we make here at the district, and attach a dollar amount to the financial impact of any changes. We talked a little bit about financial information, the type of financial information we could put up on the website. So that was a very brief overview of the Finance Committee.
Okay. And the budget and the certification of the levy that we're going to review tonight was forwarded out of the Finance Committee?
That is correct.
Okay.
With the recommendation?
With recommendation, yes.
Okay. Any questions for Tim? If not, we'll move on for topics for action. 6A, approval of the 07-08 budget and certification of the 07-08 levy.
As part of this, I guess I'd like to start with passing out some information that we got from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau. And there's been a lot of talk about how the delay in the budget impacts every district. And you're going to see that it impacts every district quite differently. Because the budget was late, and because it went past the October 15th deadline, and that's the deadline where the state has to certify to the districts the amount of aid that they'll receive, it put the DPI in a situation where really coming up with a solution to this, because there were dollars on the table that were proposed, about $79 million, that would have probably gone into state aid if the budget had been passed by the October 15th deadline. Because it wasn't passed by the October 15th deadline, what was done at the legislative level is they determined that they would put the $79 million into tax credits. So rather than the districts getting the aid directly, they would go in the form of tax credits. It creates some interesting scenarios. And if you turn to we're on page 6, and Hudson's just in that second grouping, the last district on the second grouping. You can see that first grouping of numbers, the first 3 columns are looking at school levy tax credits. And what we're going to get is additional tax credits of $525,000. What we would have received if that would have been if we would have had a budget by October 15th and we would have received those dollars in the form of aid, we would have received just under $700,000, $695,000, and that's sixth column over. So the difference between what we would have received in credits and what we received or what we would have received, what we will receive in credit, what taxpayers will receive in credits, and what the district would have received in aid is about $170,000. So unfortunately, we've lost, our local taxpayers have lost, and the district has lost $170,000. They will be put on in the form of tax credits. And the reason we're losing $170,000 is the way the formula works is if we take our budget less our state aids that we would get, and then the balance to get our budget to balance is tax levy. And so we lost this, the 695, and the difference between the 695 and the 525 has been lost, just due to property valuations, and there's different variables that affect this, but we've essentially lost 170,000.
Tim, but when you say lost, we know where it is, we just aren't getting it.
We're just not getting,
Right.
that's right, yeah, right, we're getting the taxpayers will get a credit, they'll get an additional $525,000 credit. However, if the district would have received the aid dollars, we would have actually been able to lower our tax levy by 170,000 more, is essentially what would have happened. It was more effective for our district to get it in the form of aid rather than to have it in the form of a credit. Now, if you look at, there are some districts that are very, if we say some of the most property-rich districts in the state. We turn to page A9, and you look at that second grouping, New Berlin, they're going to gain, if you look all the way over to that right-hand column, they're going to gain an additional $687,000 because of the property values. The property-rich districts came out very well in this by getting the tax credits rather than the aid. Another one, let's see, Northland Pines, that's second bottom from the group.
Yeah, it looks like Middleton, Madison,
Yeah, if you look at
close to
those-
$1 million.
Yeah, close to $1 million. So
Another big
those-
winner is Mequon, $806,000.
Yeah, those are big winners. And if you have a negative number, you're a loser. And so unfortunately, the way this worked is we're kind of a loser and lost that ability. So,
But we're in good company, there are very few winners, and the winners are pretty big winners.
yes, there.
Yeah, I see Elmbrook, which is what, Brookfield in that area?
Yes.
Almost $1.5 million to the good.
So essentially what they've done is they've basically reallocated, and the Milwaukee area is getting bigger dollars.
Then a redistribution, yeah, you're exactly right.
The state did this.
That 79 million just was reallocated differently, rather than in the form of aid. They did tax credits, and that changed the allocation, how those dollars were allocated.
And the Milwaukee area benefited.
Yeah, so
Pretty much
everybody
exclusively.
with a positive dollar amount in that far right column benefited. If you got a negative amount, then
They probably the percentage of the tax base, right?
Yeah, those are big, the tax,
So it's the same
property,
percentage
very high
probably.
property tax values, and so, yeah.
So those with the property-rich districts, Tim, in general, the ones that have been penalized, is that?
In the past, those districts, when you have enough property value, actually, your aid, your percentage of aid compared to your percentage of tax levy, the percentage aid, some of these districts are getting 20% aid, and 80% of their operation and bonding goes on the tax levy, on a local levy. For Hudson, it's been hovering around 50-50, 50% aid, 50% levy. So these districts previous to this were paying a much larger portion of their school funding off of the property tax levy, off their local levies.
Okay. Any other questions for Tim? Otherwise, do you want to move on to our proposed budget?
Yeah, I sure will. I have a few changes, unfortunately. Apologize, but with the fire and everything going on, it's been kind of interesting, but I wanna run through a few number changes that, for whatever reason, I get picked up in our spreadsheet. And then I'll go through the budget. And we will correct this, we'll correct this and send it out to you tomorrow, so you'll have a corrected version of it. But I'll start on page 4, with the first line, 10R. Change the number all the way to the right, 45,919, should be 46,219,062.
Would you go over that again, Tim, where you are?
You go on page 4, and up at the very top, it's line 10R, general fund, and go all the way to the right-hand column, 0708 revised budget. That 45,919 number should be 46,219,062.
So that's an increase in general fund revenues,
Right.
okay?
And then our grand total down at the bottom should be 64,992,204. And
Tim, that's basically the extra, the 300,000 that we were discussing in the finance committee, right?
that's actually down on the expense count. Those did get picked up. For some reason, their changes in the revenue didn't. But I'll go through that. I just want to run through these corrections here. Page 5, under the heading local sources, which is 10 lines down, under 210 taxes. All the way on the far right-hand column, 19,561,000 should be changed to 20,249,836. And then if you go further down under state sources, that's 620, state aid general. Again, all the way in the right-hand column, 24,727,000 should change to 24,386,773. And line 690, other revenue, with 217,718 should be changed to 164,318. And if you go to page 6.
So those subtotals are
and the
also,
yeah, actually, a subtotal will change too. I didn't calculate that number. But
Okay.
we will send that out updated. Then the last page, page 6, total revenues and other financing sources, 45,919 should be changed to 46,219,062. Apologize for that, but we'll get those updated and out to you. Okay. You want to turn to page 1? Page 1 gives our updated numbers based on the legislative changes and our final certified dollar amounts for district valuation. So if you look at that first section, under the mill rate and equalized value, you can see that our district valuation now stands at $3,505,000. And so you can see the percentage change is at 4.39%. I guess we were certainly expecting it to be in the single digits. We can see that trend down, actually beginning in 0405 from the 1234, then it trended down to 1135,981. And of course, now we're down into the 4.39. So the district valuation growth has definitely slowed down. The total levy is 24,960,714, and that is both for the operations in the general fund and then also for debt service. And our percentage change in levy from last year is 3.84%. And our mill rate is going from 7.16 last year down to 7.12 this year. So it's about a little over 0.5% decrease. And the second section gives the valuation by taxing district. And I'll just draw your attention down to the village of North Hudson. You can see that they've actually dropped $16,234,000 in value from 0607 to 0708. And again, the reason for this, and checking with the state valuation office in Eau Claire, is that they felt they had a number of home sales, quite a high number of home sales in the village, and they felt that was very good information, very representative for them to make a good market value judgment. So what actually happened is they felt maybe they may have been overvalued the previous year. So that's why, based on those representative property sales, they actually dropped that value down.
Okay.
Any questions on the first page? The second page is what's called the revenue limit worksheet, and it's based on general fund expenditures and debt service, the two pieces that are taxpayer funded. And you can see it goes through a few gyrations. I won't go through all of this, but you can see under that first section on the left-hand column, September and summer FTE membership averages. Those are student counts. Those are actual student counts. And it goes into taking the averages, and that's where we get our total revenue that we can raise, and that is actually on the right-hand column. And then we actually get an inflationary factor, which is line 4A. This year it was $264, which is based on the consumer. I want to say the CPI, Consumer Price Index, but I'm not sure I've got the right index. But it's based on one of the indices based on inflation, and so we do get that inflationary adjustment. If you continue going down and go down to line 8, the unused 2006-2007 recurring levy authority, $2,919,000. That's the amount that the district levied under the cap last year. So that piece kind of goes into a reserve. We're able to tap into that if needed. And then we have some transfer of service, which is actually a piece that gets pulled in. It's having to do with districts providing services to each other. If you get down to line 12, this is the October 15th certification of aid. So the state certified, again, roughly equivalent to what we received in the prior year. We didn't get the $79 million allocated out as aid. That's going to go as a credit. So we had some adjustments to that based on valuation and student increases, but the aid is set at $24,386,773. And then we go down into figuring out what our levy, local property tax levy will be. And the allowable limited revenue, $24,640,755. That's a maximum amount that we could levy on local taxpayers. What we're actually going to be levying, and this is for the general fund, is $20,414,000. So we're actually levying $4,200,000 under our capacity. And if you go down to line 15A, this is a referendum approved debt, and that's our debt service on our building bonds. Those are voter approved, and we'll be levying $4,710,000 there. So our total levy then is line 19, $24,960,714. Any questions on that?
Okay, so the upshot is that we are setting the levy below the allowable limit.
Yes.
Plus, you indicated if we needed to, there's that reoccurring or the carryover.
Yes, yeah. And now next year, that 4.2 million will show up on line 8A
Okay,
as a prior
okay.
carryover, and so the district would be able to access that if needed.
Okay.
So given what you said earlier about North Hudson's valuation, as the housing market is sort of realigning itself for the creative financing of the last 5 or 8 years, it wouldn't be unusual to expect that some of these other parts of our district might also decrease in total valuation over the next few years as houses
Well, I
are
think
sold.
if you look at the trend, we're already seeing that over the past, 4 years?
Yeah,
If not
you've
beyond.
actually seen, yeah, you're right, but you've
So-
actually seen these market values come down.
And so what happens there is that as the market values come down, the allowable limited revenue is also going to come down?
No, actually, the allowable limited revenue is based on other factors.
Based on student count and stuff like that, right?
Right, student count, previous spending, it's based on some other statewide numbers too. It gets into primary, secondary, and tertiary aid limits. And I can show you, on the next page, it gets into another page of formulas, but you would still have that levy capacity as your property values go down, but the problem with it is as your property values decrease, it does drive your mill rate up. So, it's nice if your property values are increasing at a decent rate, to keep your mill rate, it will keep your mill rate lower. So, but I don't, that's a hard, everyone's trying to predict what might happen, with homes that are in foreclosure, and, as the mortgage institutions sell those homes, it's hard to say how long they hold on to them, how long they can hold on to them, and if they sell them at lower market rates, they're going to be a deciding factor in determining market values, certainly, as the assessors look at home sales again, and so it could have a downward effect on our property values again, where they may not be increasing as much. Now, our property values also include new construction, so, and of course, that's been down.
That's been a big
quite
driver
bit
in the
too.
past.
But even so, improvements on the properties add to our numbers, so we hope that we will never get into a position where we get a negative number there, but the growth is definitely slow.
Okay.
So
So,
one thing, I'm sorry, Dan. I'm just saying, one thing to add, with regard to the foreclosures, it does sort of create sort of an artificial, I guess, atmosphere, because generally speaking, when these properties are sold to foreclosure, they're sold sometimes significantly below market value. So while these homes are going for a song, it doesn't necessarily, mean that the rest of the homes are in a similar situation with regard to the market, because, a bank doesn't want to be a real estate owner, and these properties are sold at a pretty steep discount. So just, to keep that in mind.
So has North Hudson had a larger than expected foreclosure rate?
I don't know, well, we didn't talk, I didn't have information on foreclosures, but what he said is we may have been a little overvalued in North Hudson, so we adjusted down based on that. I think, I want to say, I don't recall the number of sales, but they had a large number of sales, so they really had some good data to use to assess the property.
Okay, but it's-
Then they felt they needed to adjust that down.
I get it, thanks.
Did they go through a reassessment recently, in the last 2 or 3 years in North Hudson?
I'd have to say I don't know when the last
May?
reassessment was done.
I think,
I think it was about 3 years ago.
Was it?
Okay.
3 years ago.
Okay.
And that's an older housing stock up there also, a good portion of that. I know there's been some new development, but it's an older housing stock that you have in North Hudson, so, that's not surprising if they went through a reassessment.
The same is true in Hudson, in the city of Hudson. The houses are older there now.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
a lot of the development is going on in the townships. And so, I guess I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, so what we do now is we do the best we can to keep the mill rate as low as possible, and it goes down, down, down once again, and we're all happy with that. And next year, they change the valuation of Hudson's properties because we've sold a number of houses, and the market is adjusting for, like I said, the somewhat creative financing that a lot of people got caught up in, and houses are not selling for what they've been mortgaged at. And so what's to say that in a year or 2 years, we're not going to have exactly the same problem with a drastic reduction of the valuation of Hudson, and the mill rate's going to go up because we've sort of not prepared people for the reality of that. So I guess this is probably just a good time to get it on the,
Right, well,
record that
yeah, I think there's a lot of variables that come into play. You know, student numbers, what we've seen over the course of the summer and fall is just the unpredictability of the legislature. So I think we just have to go forward and do the best that we can with what we're given us. Tim, in terms of what we're proposing then this evening is the tax levy of the 24,960,000, and then with the budget, with those revisions that you presented, would be the budget
Right.
that we'd be acting on this evening, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
And we don't have any, if you turn to page 4, we don't have any major, we've added, we made some revisions in that budget and discussed at the Finance Committee. Again, the Finance Committee recommended the passage of the budget. Most of the funds you don't see, they're really not going to be a lot of change from when we looked at it in September at the annual meeting. Main thing is the general fund, and that's, a lot of us do the legislative action. One of the other things that that I did find is that we seem to be we get a what's called computer aid. A few years back, the state used to place a personal property tax on computer equipment, and when they didn't do that anymore, they, it generated revenue for governmental entities such as the school district, and when they did away with that, the state said, okay, we're going to give school districts, we're going to replace that levy, those levy dollars you got, with some aid. And we always go through, and part of the breakdown of the property valuations for the district is, part of that includes computer value. And so one of the differences between September and now is that unfortunately our computer values were adjusted downward quite a bit, and that resulted in us losing about 50,000 of computer aid, thus shifting that 50,000 to the levy. So we had a number of different things happen when we look at our general fund revenue. And I don't know if you want me to go through our funds again. I can go through each of the funds.
Does anybody want to go, we hit that pretty good with the annual meeting as well as, we've had a couple other meetings on the budget as well.
And then the back pages 5 and 6 are, again, just in a little more detail. It presents the budget in the programmatic format. Also gives fund balances for each of the funds, so.
Okay. If there's no other questions for Tim, I'll entertain a motion for
If
approval.
I could, Dan, just to make a comment, just so it knows, you, of course, do, and Mary does, with regard to the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee did indeed recommend the revised budget, and I, too, agree with the expenditures for which those funds are to be designated. There was, however, a philosophical difference on how to acquire those funds, and as you recall, Dan, that I had favored extracting those from the fund balance, which, as I'll remind my fellow board members, is at its ceiling. And so therefore, the budget as revised was not something that I had approved, but the Finance Committee, for which am a minority, did approve it. But I want my fellow board members to know that it was not unanimous.
Okay. Any other questions for Mark?
Question for Mark. When you say hitting the ceiling, is that board policy?
Yes.
Board, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Which, as you recall, is 30%.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that you weren't referring to, say, a state statute or something. I didn't
No,
think you
no,
were, but
no,
yeah.
I'm trying to
Okay.
talk, referring to our designated policy for the
Yep.
fund balance, which
Yep.
I believe we're trying to keep that 25 to 30%.
Yep.
What is it right now?
30.
Or about 30, yeah.
And we've said anything in excess would be going into capital projects.
Again, as I said, the expenditures, I'm completely on board for, they are necessary and important. It's where we get the funds. So, I'll make that clear. My feeling is that we should, if we could pare the fund balance slightly, I think that would send a message to the public and in effect demonstrate what we've said before, what the purpose of this fund balance is,
Well,
to cover contingencies.
I think in that same meeting, Mark, you'll recall that we did discuss, some potential projects in the future that, as we've done in the past, we've looked at the fund balance for pulling those funds for. So it's not as if, we're not ever going to tap those dollars. As I look at it, it's more of a strategic planning process of when we draw those dollars. So I'm not opposed to using those dollars, but I think our difference is when.
And I guess I would have to say that, given that part of the discussion, the fund balance isn't a savings account for future projects. I mean, that we plan for and then just sort of, store up to 30% and then sort of draw them off when it's convenient for us. It wasn't intended for that. I think that's a misuse of the fund balance to say, well, we've got some projects that might come up in the future and we want to make sure we've got money for those. I guess under the circumstances, I would have to say I'm sort of leaning on the side of, Mark, in that if we're at the cap, then we need to relieve taxpayers, not use it as a savings account for a future pet project. That bothers me.
So we're talking about $300,000 roughly, so
Right.
Well, I don't think the fund balance has ever been intended to be used as, for pet projects. I don't think that's ever been the intent. And I know when I first came on the board, we were consistently running over 30%, and that was when the board adopted the policy to cap it, or, and that's why I asked Mark if that was what he was referring to cap it at 30%.
But certainly determining that capping it at 30% doesn't necessarily mean that the board agreed it should always remain at its maximum.
True.
And certainly
True.
not for the purpose of saving it for future projects which might come up down the road. That's like way outside the discussion that the board had regarding the fund balance
That's
and
true,
the cap.
that's true.
And I think, the discussion and the policy that goes along with that is, why do we keep a fund balance? And we've discussed that in the past. A lot of it is, to maintain a cash flow, so we don't have to go into the short-term borrowing. Now, at some point in time, I'm sure, Tim, you'll do some number crunching, especially with the new school coming on board, and we'll have to absorb roughly $1 million in operating expenses. Now, as our budget continues to grow along those lines, we have to be mindful of the fact of what it's going to take to maintain that cash flow. It's not going to go down. So, and I know we've looked at some numbers when we established that policy. There are points in time during the year, even with the fund balance that we have, where we're, under $1 million?
It drops quite significantly. Because we don't receive our aids and our levy money in equal amounts monthly, we'll get a cash influx from levy payments, and then we'll get barely nothing for another 2 or 3 months, and we do have to have enough cash flow to cover operations. So it is important that you do have fund balance, and of course, fund balance isn't all cash. It's the
Receivables.
simplistic accounting formula, assets minus liabilities equals your fund balance. But we also keep it for emergencies. If we have, we can certainly have major failures of roofs, boilers, which are significant cost items. But so there are multiple reasons why we'd have fund balance. Now, and I just wanted to point out, just so you're all aware, when we look at page 4, It's 46,219,000 of revenue in the 10 fund, in the general fund. And you can see if you go down to the second section, the expenditures under the 10 fund are 49,331,000. So we're planning to spend 3.1 million out of fund balance for this fiscal year, and that's.
But
part
we're
of this.
30% after that, or before that?
Well, we did calculations, looking at the static fund balance of where we were this past year, and taking, if that never changed, and then taking our spend down, our 3.5 for Rivercrest and roughly 1.5 for the Administrative Service Center. And if everything stayed, if that fund balance stays static, we'd be at our roughly 30%.
So that's after we took out the...
Yeah, so, but I just wanted to make you aware, so you know that.
Yeah.
right?
What was the dollar amount that we used against the referendum for Rivercrest? 2.5?
3.5.
3.5.
Well, yeah, it's certainly, I'm well aware what the fund balance is and the importance of maintaining a healthy one. And I support the 25 to 30% policy. But we're there, we're at the ceiling. This is not an expenditure that is going to certainly threaten the fund balance in any way or threaten the financial integrity of this district. I think it sends an important message to the public on how we're going to spend their money. I don't think you should raise taxes just because you can. We have the money available, and this is what I perceive.
When you say
Maybe do-
raise, you mean levy.
Levy, exactly.
Levy
It's a tax.
taxes.
It's a tax. Levy sounds nice, but it's a tax, and we can cover these expenditures, but we're saying here we prefer not to. We're going to raise the levy. And I guess I just don't like the message that sends to the public, and we can handle this a different way.
And just for a point of clarification, in the annual meeting, we talked about the levy being 19,561, 352, is that what we
Yes,
said?
yeah,
The one before the change?
that's right.
Okay, well, where does the board wish to go with the budget? And,
So the vote coming out of the Finance Committee was a 2-to-1?
It was.
vote?
So naturally, just to state, I guess my preference would be for a the levy with $300,000 less, and to extract those funds from our fund balance to cover those expenditures.
Tim, I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead. Yep.
You know, I've had in my mind, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but I've had in my mind that to avoid a short-term borrowing situation, that really, it's like $11 or $12 million that we have to work with to avoid that. In other words, that's what we're working against. So if we want to talk about actual money left in our checking account that is not receivables but is cash, is a true reserve fund of 3 million, 4 million that we're
Well,
working against?
Of course, that changes all the time, but if we look back at if we just look back at a point in time, that's gonna be June 30th of this past year. Our cash investments were $12 million. Total fund balance was 18 million. Of that, 4.4 is designated for capital projects, so the amount of fund balance that is not designated is 13.7 million, and cash investments about 12 million.
Okay.
Any other
Yes, question,
questions
thank you.
of Tim? I'll entertain a motion for approval of the budget as has been proposed.
Are we looking at two motions this evening to set the budget and set the levy, or is it really
Can that be a
two?
combined motion, Tim, or does it have to be?
I believe
Is there a
you
specific
were
language?
Just a combined motion to approve the budget and the levy.
Okay.
Can we separate?
Certainly ought to be able to.
Sure.
I would hope so.
I move that we approve the 2007-2008 budget as outlined with the corrections made in this document as provided by Tim Erickson.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Could I make an amendment to the motion to cite the specific dollar amount?
Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Matt?
Let me find that.
I don't know.
I just thought it was applicable to
Yep.
cite the
Yep.
dollar
Seems
amount.
appropriate.
Yes, we're looking at a revised.
Okay, I've got a revised, let's see. What I've got is $46,219,000 and $62
Great.
for the
General.
2007, 2008 general fund budget. So I would make a friendly amendment in the dollar amount of $46,219,062.
Okay, we have a, Cindy, are you fine with that?
I'm
Okay.
happy with that.
We have an amendment to the original motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Are you able to do that? Okay.
Or I can second.
No, Or I'll second.
I wanna go
I
down-
second the budget.
Okay, we have a second
Make it
by
easy.
Mark.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion's approved and the budget's adopted. We'll move on to the certification of the levy, and what you have in your packet is the proposed levy of $24,960,000 and $24,960,714.
And I would make the motion to approve a levy of $24,660,714. Subtracting, there's $300,000
Second.
from fire.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand?
So it's a deduct of 300 from that 24,960,714.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
Now, you do need to go back, and I just realized as we were going through this, you will need to go back and revise now your budgeted revenues, $300,000 less.
Okay.
than what is reported.
No, all we
Budget
have to
revenue.
do is have a motion to provide $300,000 out of the,
So basically,
Fund
we're
balance.
we're changing where the revenue is coming from.
Well, actually, how we have to present that, though, is it has to show as, in effect, your revenues will not be equal to your expenditures, just as we're showing now, because we're taking 3.1 currently out of fund balance. Now, you're gonna take another 300,000 out of fund balance, you need to correspondingly decrease your revenues, the 46,219,000, decrease them by $300,000.
Okay.
would you need to do something with the vote?
We should, okay, so with that last motion that we had on the levy, maybe, let's do a roll call. Can I propose that? Since, can we start with Erica on the levy motion that Mark had proposed? In other words, reducing,
Erica Sherrier, aye.
okay.
Kaisershot, aye.
Menick, no.
Chernow, no.
Crimmins, aye.
Bell, aye.
Okay, so that motion is approved for the levy less 300,000, so we have that, correct?
Great, yeah.
So you're suggesting now we go back to the budget and we have to reduce that in a comparable
Yes.
amount on the revenue side?
Right, so you'd be reducing your general fund to $45,919,062.
062.
Say it again?
$45,919,062.
And what are we what do we have to do with the fund balance?
Well, then that will automatically show that you're taking those additional dollars out of fund balance,
I move that we correct the budget,
revise.
revise the budget to show $45,919,062.
Okay, we have a motion by Cindy. Do we have a
Second.
second? Second by Brian. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so that motion is approved, so.
And now now we're done, right? The money will come out of the fund balance
Yes.
to cover the $300,000 that we approved.
You basically approved all expenditures, now the revenue will come, not the revenue, but this.
Right, what you're doing is you're not taking 300,000 of revenue, so
Okay.
we just have to reduce
Okay.
that.
But expenditures and.
Everything
we all
else
approved
remains the same.
Expenditure portion of the budget.
Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. Why don't we move on to the next topic for action, the Edelog contract? Nancy?
Edgelog.
Okay.
The Edgelog proposal is on the last page of your board material. And the administration is proposing a contract for the professional services of Education Logistics, Inc., and it's referred to as Edgelog, to conduct a study to change our elementary school attendance boundaries. Although the proposal that you see on the last page references Missoula, Montana, the company has regional offices in the Twin Cities and also in Madison. Edgelog.
Nancy, just
Yes.
quickly,
Sure.
if that's the case, then why is there this $1,250 for travel?
The particular consultant associated with the proposal is located there.
Okay,
In Montana.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But just so you know that this is also a regional
okay.
professional service. Edgelog is and has been our software service provider for student transportation, has for quite a few years now. So we're familiar with them. We know them. Their references include schools in Connecticut, Ohio, California, Virginia, and also Wisconsin. They, with this proposal, will apply the guidelines and criteria that you approved 3 weeks ago in the plan to change our elementary boundaries. And they've also indicated that they can comply with the prescribed timeline. We are, in this proposal, we're asking only for services that we really can't do in-house. We have changed boundaries previously in the district, but it is much bigger now and it's more complicated. It's that part of it, applying the criteria and the guidelines, using aspects of software that we don't currently have or know how to use, that is really inherent in this proposal. We're going to certainly do our own public relations, and we're going to do our own communications with our public. We can do that. And there are professional services that do it for you. But that part of this project, we can do ourselves. With the proposal, in addition to following our criteria and guidelines, they will download our current student information that's provided by us into their planning and analysis system. They will address match the residences of our students to our total district boundaries, to our map. And then they will aggregate the data.
They're gonna aggravate us.
That's a possibility. Aggregate the collected data into an attendance boundary plan. And they're going to provide, with this proposal, they'll provide several scenarios to us. So we will be able to, we are listening to our public right now. I'm receiving via our website and also hard copy and a few telephone calls, input from our elementary parents now. And that's kind of on the front end. And then when Edgelog were to draw those boundaries for us, and you will see them, and then we'll have some parent feedback again, and then you'll see them again. There will be up to 3 major adjustments possible
Let me
in
add,
between with this contract. Yes.
just for some context. I've hired GIS services professionally a lot of times, and just to have 10,000 addresses matched in the way that she's talking about and mapped is about a $6,000 project from just about any house in the Twin Cities. So the additional work that she's talking about is probably well worth. I mean, this is, in my estimation, having used these kinds of services, this is not an inflated price at all. This is really a decent estimate of price.
We think so too, and I'll make some comment to that.
So is this an add-on to the existing?
Yes, it is. And of course, in addition to redrawing our boundaries and proposing those kinds of realignments, they will provide for us the supporting statistical data. They also, if we ask them in this contract, and I'm inclined toward at least having them present their data at the December meeting. You know, they're the experts that have manipulated the data according to our guidelines, and I think can best answer the questions that you might have or our public might have. So I would propose at least one visit. And then perhaps in January too, depending on our parent feedback and maybe the questions that you might have. The cost is $9,000 plus an additional cost for either 1 to 2 days of on-site discussion with us and presentation. The cost is budgeted. We actually budgeted considerably more based on some other contacts we had made earlier. And it's lower than we anticipated. So we would ask for your approval of this contract so that we can move ahead.
Okay. Questions for Nancy?
Go ahead.
You first.
Okay. This $12.50 per day plus travel and lodging expenses, I can't imagine how this consultant can come from Montana and not cost us at least 2 days, at least an overnight stay.
Possibly.
Okay, so
That's why I'm saying 1 to 2. And
I would think if
Yeah.
we wanted to, I think we have to expect that every visit's going to be 2 days, an overnight stay.
okay.
Okay.
I wish it wouldn't, but I think it has to.
Well,
Mark?
then how does the regional office fit into that then?
Well, the consultant who oversees this kind of study is in Montana. Okay, the regional office, actually, we did visit, I visited for several hours with a consultant who came here from Madison and actually showed me and others what can be done. So I could understand enough about the proposal and what they would be able to provide us to, I guess, recommend it to you. So there's still the support, there's the support services, and we have a relationship with the different consultants out of the Twin Cities and also Madison. And they will support the intermediate work and answer our questions and solve our problems along the way. But there is at least one person out of the Montana office who really is the expert.
Boy, I sure want him for the whole day if I'm going to pay him that kind of money.
Okay.
I mean, that's a
Mark,
lot.
do you have a,
Which, you know, the other possibility that I've thought of is not only for that day, or like you suggest, maybe overnight, that could meet with a parent audience even,
I would,
and present the materials, maybe in between, or something like that.
boy, I would sure think.
And
if we're
answer
gonna
the
make them
questions of our
Yeah.
elementary parents. as well as make a formal presentation to the board.
Okay.
And whatever else.
Mark?
Yeah, Nancy, now, and if I'm oversimplifying this, let me know. We use their software for student transportation. So in other words, if we had, let's say our hypothetical school's ready to go, we've got we know where our kids are, we'd say, okay, let's, divvy up the bus routes, and it would seem, I guess it seems to me that it doesn't look that difficult, that our software, with, I don't know if there's some enhancements it needs, wouldn't provide that. Is it a possibility we could send somebody there for some training to know what, I mean, unlike Cindy who has a lot of experience with this, I don't, so to me it seems exorbitant. I mean, we're just opening up a school and trying to figure out how
Well, it's, as I've said to various audiences now, it is partly that we're opening a school, but the other part of it is that, throughout our district, we're attempting with this opportunity to balance our enrollments. And we will have changes of boundaries affecting all of our elementary schools. In the past, it wasn't exactly that complicated. We also have and intend to look at population characteristics. We never really did that before. Socioeconomic, racial, English as a second language characteristics, those sorts of things. Not big factors for us, not really big, but it's we need to consider all of that. We don't have that sort of analysis built in, to our current capacity. We do have, our transportation specialist, who is skilled at developing transportation routes, not familiar with the software enhancements or the process of making these kinds of determinations. The other part of it, quite frankly, is this is a very, very big issue for our parents. Very big, and they care about this a lot. There's a lot of sensitivity. I've talked to several parents already. They're very nice, but very passionate about where their children attend school. And I think it behooves us to have, for part of it, and this, of course, is not a total proposal. These are not the people who are going to be on a day-to-day basis interfacing with our parents, but I think it behooves us to have experts.
Well, that was my first,
speaker.
Let me give you a couple of numbers that I think will help you a little bit. To purchase the basic GIS ArcView software that's probably being used here.
Can you describe the acronym?
GIS, it's global positioning,
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
What it is it's every point on the planet is assigned a longitude and a latitude. And so addresses are basically, they're given a space on the planet that is got a longitude and a latitudinal intersect. And then what happens, so to buy the software to do that is about $1,250 for a very basic package, and then there are additional pieces for more complicated work. To send one person to training is about $2,500. And this software is so not intuitive that I've been to the training 3 times, and usually I can learn software out of a book. And I still don't feel that I am competent to do it myself. I hire it out. So it's not an intuitive software. It's a very specialized skill.
Seems like it's a good data point for us to have in the district.
I would agree with that.
And and the other thing is, after that, then what you do is you buy Tiger files, like from the U.S. Census. They're downloadable files. They're humongous, and they cost a lot of money. And businesses that do this kind of work, they pay, $20,000 for a census file, and then they can use that to give us information.
Sure.
But if we want that same data, we have to go buy it.
Right.
And so really, for a district like ours to do this one time out of 10-year period, or even once every 5 years, it is well worth our money to hire it out.
Yeah, what this does is it does build upon and enhance, what we're basically doing now. we're looking at, and this isn't part of the contract, but we're looking at some software called Web Query. And it may be possible for us, we're analyzing that possibility now, at least Nancy Toll is. And again, this all fits together, it's all Edgelog material here. But this web query software would allow parents in the district, for example, once we proposed boundaries, maybe in December, and then eventually acted on boundaries, maybe adjusted them a little bit in between, they could actually put their address in on this software, on our website, and it would show them exactly where their child would go to school. Now, eventually, it would, and this could be done by our district transportation specialist, she could use the same software later within the redrawn boundaries to locate the group pickups, and then parents could log in themselves and could determine where their child would be picked up. Realtors could use it when they're advising parents on purchase of homes or whatever. So I think this carries with it kind of some incidental benefits to the district. It takes our capacity for communication with our parents just for more efficient and maybe more accurate management of our transportation system. We are going to be, our transportation contract with Safeway will be up for renewal again this year. I mean, this is aligned perfectly, but this kind of relationship here is also going to help us, I think, assess that contract and be, more informed, probably.
The software you just talked about
Mhm.
is not part of this proposal.
No, it's not.
Right.
It is an enhancement that could be added on at a later date.
Yeah.
The thing about the current software that we're using for transportation,
Mhm.
it is extremely limited for other uses.
Very basic.
It's not
Mhm.
designed to help us draw up boundaries, and it only has the students that we transport in our buses. It doesn't have the walking students and so forth. So a large portion of our population is not included in that software. It really is for transportation routes only.
So Mary, just so I understand, so I understand, putting the things in and getting a scatter plot of where everyone lives. Well, is part of this contract also to do some no-kidding consulting where they're looking at, are they gonna help you and the team figure out, given here's our growth areas in our district, are they gonna do like,
Yes.
so you're gonna be able to, and is that do they have some,
That's the guy out in Montana who has specialty in that area.
Right.
so, and they put some of those factors into this program?
They'll put them all in. That's one of the criteria that you approved.
Right.
That was, one was
Right.
building capacity, the other was planning for future growth in space.
And what data do you give them? Is it more qualitative data, or do you actually is there some data you give this person to help them understand kind of where the growth
We're
is?
giving them numbers. Yeah, we're giving them actual numbers. The growth areas, the anticipated growth
Yeah.
areas in our district are, east,
Right.
south.
So you provide this
eventually-
data, not only
Yeah.
the snapshot of where we are now, you
Yeah.
provide some kind of
Yeah,
predictive
Yeah.
Data.
yes. and
They'll
the
have
oth-
population.
The other
Yeah,
thing
let's-
that they do is.
I'm good with this,
Yeah.
so can we just,
Okay.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. First of all, what Brian said intrigues me, and so I can understand it. Are you, because I'm not, what he's saying, I'm not reading here. To me, it just like sort
this is the one paragraph there.
boundaries.
The attendance boundary will meet building capacity provided by, other considerations that will be used include maintain geographic cohesiveness, moving as few students, and it doesn't actually.
I don't see
Well,
anything, I don't see anything about
they're
growth.
using
like-
different, they're using different vocabulary, but they're talking about neighborhoods, and that was part of what you're talking
Well,
about.
we wouldn't, along those lines, we wouldn't be considering shuffling people around based on racial or socioeconomic status,
No,
would
well,
we?
No, but we're gonna look at it.
Okay,
Well,
to
we're
what
gonna
end,
look
I
at it.
guess,
We're
I
gonna be
mean.
informed about it.
Mhm.
I would
And
think
if you'll
you'd want to.
remember, when we did a smaller redistricting a few years ago, we had questions from community members about that.
We sure
Were
did.
we, yeah, do you remember that?
We sure did.
And that was a very, very good question from the
Mhm.
community. And
Sure.
it's something we need to be sensitive to and be knowledgeable about.
Well, and one of the things you have to remember too is that, you know, there have been census in this county since the 1850s, and even maybe before that, 1830s even. And the truth is that until the 2000 census, St. Croix County had 0% non-white population. This is the first census in the history of us here that, that there has been diversity in the population. And so it really is important to redistrict, knowing what the impact of that is on school populations and on the district as a whole. So it really is important stuff.
We're doing, there's a couple of different approaches to this. And it fits our district best to use a neighborhood approach. But Edgelog right now is working with Racine. Okay, and they're having them do two different studies. One is relative to a neighborhood approach, and the other is racial balance.
Of course,
Now
we're seeing that would be imperative.
Yeah. And then they're going
But-
to, their Board of Education is going to pick one or the other and then make changes to it.
Sure.
That is, I'm not suggesting
Yeah.
that's not what we're
Yeah.
looking at here, but it is, we certainly are going to apply to this map population characteristics, and we're going to take a look at that.
Yeah. I certainly think the data is important for us to gather. I guess my past experience with the redistricting process, it had a very personal component to it.
It is personal.
And I'm very, I'm hoping we don't lose that, because I think having those, meetings with the parent groups and the people in the community, and having the data there, but not having that as the sole driver of our decision-making.
I look at
That's
that,
right.
I look at it as the district leadership is kind of program managing and driving this effort.
Mhm.
This is just an important piece of data
Yep.
that the district needs to make decisions.
Yep.
By no stretch are we kind of using a consultant to put together the redistricting plan. This is just I think this is just some data that we're gonna work with to help us figure it out, right?
Just remember that you looked at, I think it was at the last meeting, the plan for changing elementary boundaries. That included a number of opportunities for parents to communicate. And Nancy's already receiving
Yeah,
those
yeah,
communications,
Mhm.
and we'll be
Not a
working with
lot,
Tracy
but
to
quite a
put
few.
those together. And then when the boundaries, she has a committee of parents, representatives from each school that have put guidelines together. They will be looking at the first set of boundaries that are proposed. And then there will also be meetings, I believe, at each of the schools.
Yeah.
Between the time that you see the first draft and you vote on the final draft. So we're certainly combining those elements. The district, since the last time boundaries were changed, the complexity, the size of the district and the complexity of the district has increased. And so we have more variables to think through and consider in this process. And so that's what we're trying to do, to ask experts to help us
Have
with
we-
that, but don't forget the human element as well. It
Okay.
is
Have we reference checked this Edgelog? I know you were using them now, but in this process, have we reference checked them and have they done a good job?
I have, yeah, I have. They did provide, I mentioned
mentioned
the
Racine.
schools that they're working with,
Yeah.
but they provided me names and
Did you call them?
telephone. I did,
They're happy with them?
yes, yeah.
I sense that we have.
Yeah, I just, one quick question, and
Okay.
I can support this, but, so the data that we will generate will be applicable to our existing EduLog program, which is transportation specific. And where I'm going with this is just that, I can remember when we were adding 150, 200 kids a year, and we'd add like one bus. So, I mean, we've had tremendous cost savings just through this simple transportation program. So if this data will plug into that, it's just going to give us that much better data to manage our,
Right, and this is all of our students,
Yeah,
not just
yeah.
those that are eligible or will be eligible for transportation.
Sure.
And we'll hold that in a separate
Yeah.
Well,
file.
you'll have all the addresses in the district, won't you?
Yeah, we have.
Every address in the district would be in the file they give back.
Yeah, yeah, and we're in the process right now of, we have our Skyward management system, which has the student data in it for all of our students. We're exporting that now, working with Skyward and exporting it to our existing Edgelog, that basic program, but setting it in a separate map or a separate file.
Mhm.
And then, if you approve this particular project, we'll move ahead then to have them do the analysis and additional work.
Okay.
Could
We
do
can,
something
we
like
can
this
have
for Prairie?
Brian do some of the
Pardon?
touch-up.
Was something
work.
like this done for Prairie? Nancy?
Was something like this done? Not to this extent, no.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, just to get it on the table for vote. Make a motion that, to approve the Educational Logistics Incorporated proposal for elementary school attendance boundary realignment study in the amount of $9,000. And if and when applicable, additional fees of $1,250 per day plus travel and lodging.
Okay, we have a motion by Dick. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
And one nay. The motion's approved. We'll go forward with that then. The next item, citizens' request to speak. Lori, do we have a, is there,
Did she complete a form?
is there a form? Okay. We have a request from Lori Bernard to speak on the topic of the fire at EP Rock. Couple questions, and then the tunnel between Rivercrest and Camp St. Croix.
Can I do that? May I ask 2 questions? My first question about the fire at EP Rock is that maybe you all know, and it's just not been made clear to the public. Do we know how it started? I didn't hear any
And
discussion.
we'll respond.
Okay.
You'll give us
Oh, this
all
is
your
so
questions,
confusing.
and then we'll
Okay.
respond, Lori.
Okay, and then the second question is, do we or do we not have an alarm system at that school and all the other schools in direct link to our fire department? Okay, so now do I make my comment and then I get the answers to the questions?
No, you'll,
Because some of the answers actually play into my comments.
Okay.
It isn't a dialogue, it's just you talk and tell us what you want us to hear, and then there's a time for us to comment afterwards.
Okay. Awkward, but I understand your protocol. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. And my concern really stems from a board meeting, I think it was 2 months ago, where there was a discussion about building this tunnel under County Road Double F to Camp St. Croix. I believe the feasibility study's been completed, and Tom Holland and Dick Munich had offered to do private fundraising for the approximately $250,000 project. I've talked with a few people in the community about this, curious about their reaction, because I know what my reaction was. Why? It's a pretty basic question. Why would we do that? Currently, students use Camp St. Croix. They're bused to the facility. Would more students use it if we had a tunnel? Is it going to save the district money in busing? What I'm envisioning is you're just going to bus kids to Rivercrest and they're going to walk through the tunnel. Does that greatly enhance their experience? I don't know. Or is it simply a method to expand parking for the Y? You know, I think we really have to look at who's benefiting from this. And I'm getting off track, but that's one basic question. When I told people that the board's considering doing this, they said, why? You know, and these are people whose kids may go to Rivercrest or maybe don't. But that was one question. The second question someone brought up to me is, you know, the YMCA is a Christian organization. You can look at their bylaws, you can look at their mission statements. I think they're a little coy about it, but it does stand for Young Men's Christian Association. They would tell you they serve people of all faiths, which is absolutely correct. But they also promote Christian values. That's great. We've been charter members of the Y. I see some of you there at 5 o'clock in the morning. My question is, would our school district form similar partnerships with Teens for Christ, with Christian Community Home, You know, if those facilities were in close proximity, would we build a tunnel to them? And I think you can see the point that I'm getting at. It's nothing against the Y, it's nothing against Camp St. Croix. I'm just saying, is that a healthy partnership? Is that something we want to promote? A nonprofit organization partnering with a taxing entity. And finally, I'd just like to address the issue of private fundraising done by board members. Is that done on behalf of the school district? Are they doing it on behalf of the Y? I think people look at this board as, you guys are our voice. You're the voice of taxpayers, you're the voice for lots of people in the district. But who is that fundraising being done on behalf of? We expect board members to oversee the business of the district, to protect its assets, and to ensure that our students receive a sound education that prepares them for the future. Parent groups all the time, I know, raise money for things like playground equipment, items that are peripheral to education. I would venture to guess if this is a project that parent groups deem valid and worthwhile, they would jump on board. And you'd have parent groups from several schools doing fundraising. It just, I'm just questioning this partnership and who's really going to gain from it. Certainly the YMCA stands to gain financially from it. And so I would just bring that to the board's attention. And I've been thinking about this and haven't brought it up, but in light of what went on in EP Rock over the weekend, actually, I sort of thought, what are we doing? Spending $250,000. Frankly, if that money can be raised from the community, I would venture to guess there are other more valuable things it could be used for. One is if our school fire alarm system is not connected to the fire department, I would think that would be a much higher priority than building a tunnel under a road, so a few kids can walk through there when they could just as easily be bused to Camp St. Croix. So I throw it out there. It's an interesting idea. I don't know that it's a high priority for the district. I don't know that it's something that taxpayers, quite frankly, would value to the extent of $250,000.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Any comments?
Well, I'd certainly like to go to the cause. Lori's questions about the cause. The cause has not been determined yet. It is under investigation. But what we have been told at this point, it is not suspicious in nature. They just haven't determined it yet. And so that continues. We're hoping to get some finality in that tomorrow, but we're not sure yet, so it's still under investigation. What we know is it started in the boiler room. And let's see, the alarm system, that's a good question. The EP Rock alarm system does not connect to the fire department. I don't know about other alarm systems. I know Rock does not.
I would say for sure we would find out.
And I can get that information.
That's alarming, no pun intended.
Just our partnership with the YMCA is something that we're looking to enhance services in our community for our students, for our staff, for community members, and we have many things in common. Certainly, they have a Christian element in their charter and so forth, but what we have in common, we are looking at the values that we have in common and working together and reducing the duplication of services. They have knowledge and skills that can build on the knowledge and skills that we offer to our students. For example, they are very knowledgeable in the area of environmental education. And that's one area when we think of Rivercrest and it being a sustainable school and looking at developing or further developing our curriculum around environmental preservation. And we look to the Y as a resource as well as UW River Falls as a resource for us, and we will be using both of those resources. The Y has already stepped up to help us with taking care of children at EP Rock and meeting the needs during the response to the fire that occurred there. And they were looking at doing this at low cost, meeting their costs in relationship to taking care of the students. And they were very willing, and those are the kind of things that we're looking at. We have numerous things in there in environmental ed. We would like to take students over there and use that as a teaching space during the day for UP Rock. And that would be a great partnership for us. That road is certainly a barrier for that school and the children. When we held the groundbreaking there, just having people cross the road, and it's only 2 lanes now, it is going to be more than 2 lanes at the time the school is open. That was very, safety was a concern for us. And for us to be able to use their site as a teaching space, that's a real big advantage for that school. We also look to use their expertise to help train our teachers and develop our curriculum on environmental preservation at our other schools as well. So we're talking about things that are going to be advantageous to the Hudson School District, and that's only a start of the things that we have talked about as possibilities. So yes, I think there will be advantages for the Y, but I certainly think that there will be advantages for the Hudson School District students and families as well.
Yeah, I just make a quick comment. The $250,000, it's not taxpayer money. We hope to be able to raise that dollar amount through private funds. I'm optimistic that we can do that, but it sounded like you were saying we were using tax dollars, the taxpayers wouldn't support it. It's not tax dollars. If we don't raise the necessary money, then probably won't be a tunnel under County Road F. I think the link is valid. It's, we're within eyesight of a national and scenic wild river. We are going for LEED certification for Rivercrest. We have a strong environmental component that we think that we can expand upon in conjunction with a partnership with the Y. We can be a good neighbor to them and vice versa. We think it makes a lot of sense. And one of the ways to implement that is to implement it with a good, safe connection. We felt a tunnel would be a way to do that. But at no time did we ever think that we would build that and use $250,000 worth of tax money to do that.
I heard her say that she doesn't feel it's important that board members go out and do the private fundraising.
This is where I'm confused, because I was told it's not a dialogue, and yet you're all saying things that I either disagree with, or and I've been misunderstood, so I don't know what the...
Erica, go ahead.
Just that it's, that we as the board represent the voice of the people and the community, and that I hear you saying that why would we take that money and have us as board members go out and privately get those funds to fund this tunnel that they don't feel is important? And that parent groups would probably be willing to raise those funds if they were brought on board and asked to contribute as a community thing. That's what I heard her say. I didn't hear her say anything about taxes, that we're using taxpayer money. Just that.
Well, I thought I heard her clearly say that she didn't think the taxpayers would think that that'd be money wisely spent or would support that money. And I just wanted to explain clearly that it's not taxpayer money.
And I also heard her say clearly that if we could raise that kind of money from taxpayers, then we could spend it better. But I think the point that is just that Mr. Mann is trying to make is the idea that anybody who would contribute to that project would do so because they felt their dollars were well spent in that way, and people who didn't value it wouldn't be contributing to it, and they would still certainly have the use of it. I guess I wanted to say thank you to you. That's what I really wanted to say, because I think that you brought up some really valid points. And when I think about especially the fire alarms, I think it's important. To me, it's alarming that we don't know whether we're connected to the fire department or not. I suspect none of our buildings are. And I think that probably not very many public buildings in the community are directly connected. And I don't think that's, I think that's because of the way that the community has built up. It's
You know,
Okay.
I would suspect that's true. I think it's really important that we at least know whether they are.
Why do we have kids practice fire drills? Connected to the fire
Mark,
department. I
Mark
mean,
or Brian, do you have any
Oh,
comments?
I know that,
No,
but
I didn't.
then
No.
who's coming?
My only comment is that was something I'd like to follow up on.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's something that we can take to the next
Good,
facilities.
good point, we should check on it, see if it is, and see what we need to do.
I wouldn't.
I don't even know how far along
don't
we're not.
know. I mean, I wouldn't say we don't know, I can ask Jim, and he
Right.
can tell me.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm in the district that long,
Sure.
so, and, you know,
Yeah, I'll-
there's some of us, so.
Tim,
yeah, we
my
can
point
find
is,
out,
my,
right?
that's not my point, my point is, we should follow up with people who would know, right?
That's what we're.
And then make the appropriate decisions after that,
Yes.
so.
Yeah.
I don't expect our finance guy to know everything. So,
Okay, thanks. Any other board administrator comments? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mark, second by Cindy. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry to keep you a little extra.
Thank you.